Hi guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm Rosalind Bell, and today I'm making a tutorial for you all on the piece that we released last Friday. It's an arrangement of the first Noel. This is the piece. You can get it for free on our website, by the way. I'll show you how to do that. All right, so to get your free copy of this piece, you just head on over to our web store, and I will throw that link in the description as well as in a tag so you can find it easily. And you get to the first Noel, and you can select the sheet music. We also sell the audio and video if you would be interested in that. And let's take a look at our cart here. So now you can check out with the code free 2023. Oops. And it will be free for you. So once you've got the sheet music, you can rejoin and follow this tutorial. So the piece is structured in 3 parts. The first part, which is indicated with rehearsal letter A, is in G major, and it's also easy. It's the easiest part to play. I made this piece kind of with the option of only playing the first section for people who are not yet advanced enough to continue onwards. So the A section goes until here, second page here. There's this optional ending, and if you take that optional ending, then you end the piece in G major at the end of the A section. And if you'd like to continue, then there's a B section here, which is an interlude, and it modulates to E major. And then here is the C section, which is the theme again in E major. And then that continues on until the end. So today I'm going to go through each one of those sections, the A, the B, and the C, and give you some tips and pointers for each one of those. And if you feel that you'd like a little more help with this piece or with any other piece, whether it be one of our arrangements or something else, you can take an online lesson with me. You can buy that in our web store. And you can find more information about that on our website. So, without further ado, let's get started with section A. The first thing that I'm going to cover is the transition here between measure 6 and 7 into this bar. This bar in the 3rd fret, G major chord. So there's a couple ways you can get there. One way is to use your middle finger on the F sharp. So you'll be coming here, if I play all of measure 6, you'll be coming like this. And then you can use your middle finger up here. And while you do that, go ahead and prepare your index, extend it so that it will be ready to get into the bar. So you play, and then you go right into this bar here in the 3rd fret. Okay, I think that's probably the easiest way, and that's the way that I did it in the video. But another option, which is a more advanced technique and is very, very handy to learn, is called the hinge bar technique. And you can do that as follows. You'll be coming out of this same thing, and then you play the F sharp with the base of your finger. So your finger is like a hinge. That's why it's called a hinge bar technique. It's like a door hinge. You're just playing with the very base of your finger, pushing like right there. And then that enables you to have a really smooth transition into the bar in the 3rd fret. You slide it up like this. So the whole passage will be, and then that, and then slide in. So that's also a great way to play that section. You can choose whichever option feels more comfortable to you. But the hinge bar is a technique that it's good to practice because it's very helpful for a lot of other passages later. So the next thing I'd like to cover is measure 11. Pop over here. Now in measure 11, you have a passage which is very common in classical guitar music, where there's like a series of intervals, usually 3rds or 6ths, going like up or down, and then in between you have a drone note. This kind of passage happens a lot. For example, like in Lagrima. you know, the beginning of Lagrima by Tariga. This has this kind of drone note in between, and there's many more. At any rate, this section here, because what we're doing is playing a note on the first string every time in the chord, so the melody, and then in between we have the third string open. So we're skipping over the second string. You can see that very clearly in the tab. The second string is not going to be played throughout that section. So the most efficient way to do this in terms of right hand fingering is like this. You can alternate A and I and just not use your middle finger at all. And I know for many people this feels a little bit awkward in the beginning, this kind of a thing. But it is really the most efficient way to sort of make sure that you get the right strings all the time. Because when you do a stretch like this, that might work much of the time, but sometimes you can accidentally play this one, or you might accidentally play with your index. So it's just better to skip over the finger. So then that passage will sound like this. So that is my advice for that section. Now I've only written that in one place here on the score, but that is something that you can apply anytime that you have a similar passage in this piece, or just generally. It's a good general piece of advice for right hand fingering on classical guitar. All right, next point, measure 27. So this is also a bit of advice for this part of the piece, but it's also very practical in general to be thinking about this. You can use a guide finger to connect all those thirds. So you see at the end of measure 27, we're going to have this line of ascending thirds. And for the top note each time, you can use your first finger, left hand, first finger. And the reason that I've written to do it that way is so that you can have your first finger sliding along. So you'll start here. Now, when I go to the next third, I lift my middle finger, but I do not lift my index. I just release pressure enough that you don't hear a slide, but keep contact with the string. And then you continue upwards like that again. Now for this transition, both fingers can stay. And again, keep contact with the string, but don't push so hard that you get a slide, because that's not the point right here. And then we go up again just with index. So throughout this whole passage, the index finger is our guide finger. Index finger doesn't break contact with the first string the whole time. Like that. That will help you to make that connection much more smooth. If you don't do the guide finger thing, you end up having quite a choppy sound. And if you slide all the way, I didn't slide that last one, it was too much habit. There, slide like that. Not really desirable in this place. At some other moment you might like to. But so the idea of the guide finger is you keep contact with the string, but you don't push hard enough to create a slide. You just release, but don't break contact. And it makes it much easier to make big jumps. So in this case, the jump isn't very big, but sometimes you might use a guide finger to go all the way along the length of a string to switch from one position to the next, and that makes things a lot more secure. So that's a good tip to try to apply also in other areas whenever you can. So now the last point I want to cover about the A section is this optional ending and how to play it. So it basically what it is just you stay on the same chord that you're on here. So in measure 31, we've ended like this. That's the last melody note. And then you can just continue kind of doing an arpeggio up, a little bit down, and then end on a full G chord. So this last two measures will sound like like this. And then the piece is over in G major. So that's your option if you prefer to end it a little bit earlier in order to avoid the difficulties of the later section, or just because, I mean, it is very soon before Christmas. If you're wanting to play this for anybody, or like actually on Christmas Day, it might be more practical to end it early. So just to give you a sort of example of what the ending sounds like, it will be like this. Let's see. So in this way, you can make the piece a lot more sort of achievable in a short time frame. So that might be a nice idea. Now, before we get on to the rest of the tutorial here, I'd just like to take a moment to let you know what we do. Bell and Finch. We, of course, make the videos on YouTube that you've seen. We sell scores, which you probably also know. We also do commissions. So if you've written a piece that you would like to have performed, either put on YouTube or just for yourself to use for whatever you'd like, we do that. So get in touch if you have something that you would like us to play. We also make arrangements. So if you have sort of an idea for a piece, we had a client who sent us a recording that he had made just singing into his phone, and we fleshed it out and turned it into a complete song with, had like drums, bass, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, singing, just an entire production. We made a video for it. So we would love to do that kind of a project for you if you have a piece that you'd like to be produced and really made just based on your idea. So don't hesitate to get in touch if you have any projects of that nature. Now back to the tutorial. So let's take a look now at the interlude. That's the rehearsal letter B. And we'll see, I'll show you a few points here that will be helpful. So the first is right at the beginning. This is a hinge bar. I've indicated it this way. There's kind of not a standard way to indicate a hinge bar, so this is what I did in this case. So this G here, if you play it without a hinge bar, let me just show you what that would look like. Play it without a hinge bar, like this. Then you need to jump to a bar in the 5th fret. And if you do this, you're going to have a really choppy sound. It's a dee 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 ding, and it's very separate, If you wanted to flow, kind of the only solution in this context is the hinge bar. So where I talked about it earlier in the A section, and it was just optional there because there was another possible solution. Here, there's not really a great one if you want to let all the notes ring through. So you can do it like that, and then slide up, and I'll do faster. I keep reversing the arpeggio notes there. They're supposed to go up, like this. You can even connect it with a slide if you like that. And that gives you a very smooth sound. So again, in order to do the hinge bar, you use just the base you could kind of think about playing it with your knuckle right there, and then you slide it up, and it gives you a nice smooth connection and an easy transition into the bar in the next measure. So now my next point brings me to my next point, which is already right there in this measure. So we have a bar right here. This is a D major chord, D major bar chord. And you see that we need to play 3 notes all in the 7th fret. Okay, so the standard way of playing this chord is like this. Now some people can do it all in one finger. I don't usually manage that consistently enough, although now I am. I don't usually manage that consistently enough that I want to use it, but In any case, the way that I'm recommending that you do it here is like this. And so second finger can kind of push 2 strings at once. And then your third finger can play the next one and you have your bar. And the reason that I'm recommending that in this case is so that we can have a nice seamless transition into the melody that follows. So I would recommend trying one of these 2 types of bars, either the one that I'm showing you now with your second finger flat and then your third finger helping on the next string, or this one that I'm not great at it. My finger doesn't bend back too well that way. Some people's do. And if you're lucky enough to have one of those, then you can do that there. Otherwise, you can do what I'm doing to get a nice smooth transition. So just to show you the contrast, if you were to do it like this, I mean, it's a small difference. This is all minor. This is minor stuff, but this is how you kind of can bring your playing to the next level. So if you play it like what I just did, you have this note that cuts out right before your next melody note, so that the harmony doesn't ring through as well. And I think it's nicer if you can manage to do one of these other styles, so sort of more advanced barring with your middle finger, your ring finger of your left hand, in order to have a smoother connection, so that this F sharp won't just disappear, you know? So anyway, that's a minor point, but I think that that could help, could certainly help to take your playing to the next level. And that idea can be used as well here in measure 37. So that's marked there with the 2 and the 2 and the 3. But again, you could try 3, 3, 3 if you'd like. And then here also in 39. So that's the same idea there in all those places. And now the last point I'd like to touch on here in the interlude is measure 40. That's the harmonic, this measure that ends the interlude, or very close to the end. There's a harmonic there, a right hand artificial harmonic, to get this B. So you could also, I'll show you first the way that I intended, and the way that I wrote it in the score is to play this. And you hold the B there with your ring finger. And then in the right hand, you have to touch right above where the 21st fret would be. And then you do a harmonic like that. So, like this. The reason that I put that in there is so that you can, again, sort of let all the harmony notes ring through and not cut them. But there would be an easier way to get that B. You can also play it just here, so 12th fret, 2nd string. That's the same note, and it's a lot easier to play. So you could consider doing it like that. And I'm now making some effort to hold this B, because otherwise then everything's really gone. If you don't hold that, you get this. That's really not so nice, but if you at least hold the bass note, you get some continuity, so that would be an option if you find the other harmonic difficult. So you can hold the bass note. I think that's sort of continuous enough, but my preference, which is why I put it in the score, is this. So anyway, just another option there for how you could possibly do that section. All right, so now on to the C part. First, I'm going to talk about using a guide finger in measure 45, and that's going to come up again throughout, like here again in 47 and in 48 and so on. So this is a piece of advice for the entire section. So my advice is to use your pinky as a guide finger, and I wrote that here in measure 45. So I'll show you what I mean by that. We're going to have this sliding down figure. So I'm keeping my pinky in contact with the first string. I do release pressure in between the notes so that I don't get a slide, because that's not the intention here. But just keep your finger sort of in contact with the string in order to have a smooth transition. And it's important that you do that with your pinky or whichever finger would happen to be on the first string or any of the smooth strings, the nylon strings. Because you don't want to have a guide finger on one of your bass strings or you're going to get a lot of squeaking. I'll just show you what that would sound like if I would kind of use both as a guide, which is very tempting to do. It would sound like this. Some of the squeaks are more egregious than others, but they're all sort of not desirable. So basically what you want to do is use your pinky as a guide finger and then lift the finger that you're using on the fourth string every time so that you don't get a squeak, and it will sound like this. So I've had that sort of, there was one little squeak, but it's a much less, it's a great way to reduce the noise. So that's my advice for that part. And that comes up throughout, as I said. So the next point I want to address is the right hand fingering in measure 50. Here's measure 50 right here. That's a measure where we have a natural harmonic, but it's played with the right hand only. So it's like the artificial harmonic technique. And so typically in a section like this, you might use the right hand fingering M-I, 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 because you're alternating first string, second string. And that's fine. But here it would be preferable if you would use A-M. So that's why I wrote the A-M there. And that is to keep your index finger free to do this right hand harmonic. Let me just show you the difference. So if I were to play that section or that in that measure with M-I, then my index has to jump like from the second string to the fifth, back to the second, and that can be a tricky thing to do. So it would be better if you play with A-M, A and M. Now your index finger is just free, so it's much easier to make this transition and then here back to M. So that's just an idea for you. Actually, I think I may have done it with M and I in the video, so it's not like it's impossible, but this is better, actually. This is a better idea. So I would go with that if I were you. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is measure 59 here. That's the C sharp minor chord. And this is not a typo, the order of the fingers, the 3 and 4. Now, of course, typically you would play like this, 3 and then 4, like this. This is the typical fingering for that chord. But I'm recommending in this case to do it the opposite way, and that is because of the melody that follows. So if you imagine that we had that we played it in the more conventional way, so you really hear that sort of unsustained quality of the harmony. It's not nice. It gives it a very choppy sound. So it's better in this case. My suggestion is to reverse the fingers. So you are still shortening the harmony. I mean, I'm not holding the G sharp anymore because my pinky has to move, but it's like less severe. You don't notice it as much. So that's my suggestion for that place, and it's repeated every time that. So I think I actually repeated in one place. Yeah, right here. When you're in the next time that you're in C sharp minor with the same melody following. So it's the exact same measure. And I recommend that you play it in the same way just to make it smoother and to make it, more legato, sort of more just a fuller, richer sound. That's my suggestion for that place. Okay, now on to measure 62, right here. You can see it's indicated in the score to do a slant bar. So by that I mean that you can play the chord like this. You can just use the standard fingering. And then for the bass line, if you can slant your finger like this, that is really nice, because then you still have the melody note ringing through on top. Really pretty. If you don't do that, it's still okay, but I think it's better if you can do the slant bar. So the idea of a slant bar is you play, in this case, in the 7th fret, so you're getting a high B with your knuckle, like this, and then you play in the 6th fret, in this case, with the tip of your finger. And you don't have to push in between. My other strings are not barred, because there's no need. You're using your other fingers. So just focus really on those two places. And it takes some practice to get used to a slant bar, but it's a great technique that will help you to play more legato in a lot of other situations. So I would recommend trying that. Now the last point that I'd like to address here is in measure 69. It's this line of ascending thirds played with 2 and 3. Well, that's my recommendation, is to play them all with 2 and 3. So let me just show you what that looks like here. So 2 and 3. Now stretch them out, 2 and 3. Stretch them out, or continue to keep them stretched, and then we close up the gap again. I'll show again from a different angle. I think that wasn't super clear. And then, yeah, now you can see. So I think normally you might say to do the 2 and 3 and then 2 and 4. That would also be fine if you like the feeling of that. I felt that it feels in this case more secure to just use 2 and 3. Because you're up really high, it can just be a little hard to sort of manipulate your fingers when you're playing in this region of the neck. So in that case, yeah, that's why I'm recommending to do it like this. Also, then you keep your pinky. Your pinky's like at the ready, to do that slur. Whereas if you've been using your pinky all the way through, you kind of exhaust it a little bit. It makes it a little harder to get that slur. So that's my recommendation for that passage. So thanks for watching, and I hope this was of use to you and helpful to just take your playing a little bit more to the next level. If you'd like help with this or with any other piece, like I said, don't hesitate to get in touch, and we can do an online lesson. I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks. See ya.